All right, you bunch of yahoos, strap yourselves in for another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity.
In other words, shut up, sit up, and pay attention.
Rick, I mean, you of all people, you've been involved in the wacky world of professional wrestling. You've been involved in the wacky world of mixed martial arts. I mean, but you're an entrepreneur, businessman. You've done a lot of different things. I just, what's the latest, greatest thing that you're involved in?
Oh man, that's a big question. Yeah, I've been all over MMA and pro wrestling, both for sure. And I don't know how deep into that you get on the show, but we can deep dive
No,
out.
we'll jump into those. I'm just kind of curious what's on the current on the frying, you know.
What is what? I'm so sorry, Dan. What's that, my man?
No, I just said I know we'll jump into all that, but it's kind of good. I just wonder what's currently on your plate. What do you?
What's currently happening? Well, I'm involved in. I'm really dealing with my health right now. I don't know if you guys know or not, but I had a recent brain cancer diagnosis of all things. So I've been pretty focused on that. I'm not hyper focused on it. That's why the eye thing, the radiation brings out everything you have underlying. So I guess I had an eye infection ready to pop, but whatever, no big deal. Dan, in the world of the squared circle or the cage or whatever you want to call it, the big project right now is with my best pal Butterbean, getting him one more big fight. After some great work he did with
we had Butterbean on. He was fantastic. I get the transformation that he went through. Wow, yeah, that was incredible.
How's his weight doing? His back, and how's he moving?
He's much, much better, man. He's as you saw, he's upright. He's running bleachers. I wouldn't say he's sprinting the bleachers, but he's running the bleachers. And I'd say he's a good bet to be. What's that, Don? Sorry.
That was a seismic activity going on,
huh? Yeah, pretty much, man. But yeah, we're working on that. Excited about it. It's gonna be over either in Japan at Ryzen or maybe here for MVP, part of the Tyson Jake Paul thing, one or the other. So that's kind of a fun thing, and it's particularly gratifying for me because it's far more than like just a business transaction. Butterbean is absolutely one of my best friends on the planet. I worked on him for 5-6 years to get with Dallas Page because, Don, Butterbean, great guy, but he was all but done, man. He was depressed. He was beaten. He was 500 plus pounds. And now he's like this happy, upbeat guy again. So if he never fights again, it's all been worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, it's like he's already won the battle just because of how he's transformed his life around, and I mean he's already won. Hardest part will be is like finding him that last match. So what you think, or do they have someone yet, or they're still working on that?
No, we're still working on it. Again, Ryzen is a possibility. You probably heard they're looking at rerunning Mayweather Pacquiao. So possibly on that card, if that happens, it's like the semi-main. One thing I'll never forget was being at the very last Pride show ever. And Dan, someone you and I know was on that card. This guy right here, Mr. Don Fry. And
that was the last card?
It was the last one.
Wow.
And they booked on, I think you fought James Thompson, maybe.
Yeah.
But
they come to interview me. They set my ass up. They said they're going to come interview you, So they interviewed me 4 days before. And then, hey, well, I'm here. You want to fight?
Like
right.
I said, right. Yes. That's Japan for you. But Dan, the really cool thing about that I'll never forget was you're indoors. I think we were at the Osaka Dome. I don't know. But it's one of the giant indoor stadiums that fits 60, 70,000 people, whatever it is. And like every major Japanese legend that was still fighting was on that card. And markedly, the two biggest ovations that night were Don Fry and Butterbean. And then a Japanese fighter after that. It was pretty amazing.
Really? Wow. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Never forget that.
No, I
Two
mean,
Americans in the land of the rising sun were the big stars that night. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's I really, the Japanese, they really have great turnouts for their events. I mean, although they're a little bit more quiet, a little bit more subdued, but you know, kind of almost in unison when you see something cool that happens, they're like all together. Oh, you know, it's like they're really like studying the match. It's like, well, that's actually pretty cool to see
It's a
that.
whole different audience.
Yeah.
You won't have fighters yelling F-bombs from mid-cage. I hate that. I hate it. I hate what it's become in that regard. The behavior is so much better. The atmosphere is, I love what Dana and the rest have done with UFC and what Scott did before he sold Bellator.
Yeah.
Ray Sefo and folks are doing with the PFL. But there's just something about the behavior of the Japanese fans that just makes you feel good to be there. No doubt about it. It's great stuff. So anyway, Butterbean hopefully at Ryzen, maybe on the Mike Tyson Jake Paul card. We've spoken with management for Hafthor Bjornsson, otherwise known as the Mountain from the Game of Thrones, as a possible opponent, which might be interesting. And if not that, we don't know, but it'll be interesting, whatever it is.
When is the date?
Well, I'm sure with you being involved with this, that it'll be, yeah, it'll be, I'll leave it at that. Interesting is probably the best word for it. No, it'll be exciting. It'll be something different, and it'll be very, very marketable.
What's the
No,
date?
What, Don?
What's the date on the
Well,
tweet?
if it's Japan, I'm sorry, I'm turning my phone off, guys. That was rude. If it's Japan, the one date that's being discussed right now is July 28th. And then if we're so lucky as to get on the Jake Paul Mike Tyson card at Texas Stadium, that's also July. It's right around the same date. Wow, I'd have to look. July 20th, I think. So either way, we're probably looking mid part of summer.
Well, Mark Colvin's getting his ass in shape. Oh shit.
Damon Feldman at Celebrity Boxing is a dear friend. I love Damon and I respect him for what he does with celebrity boxing. He called a few months ago to try to make a Butterbean versus Mark Coleman fight for celebrity boxing. And that was just not something that was going to work. But it's not a good fight for Mark, first of all. But both got in a boxing match. Just like an MMA fight would not be a good fight for Butterbean with Mark Coleman and vice versa. But who knows? We'll see what happens. Good for Mark, man. I'm happy to see Mark coming back as well.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
Well, Don, you get those guys like us, man. They've been around it for a while that are all but dead for all intent purposes. And, so many of our brothers, the Sean O'Hares and the Roddy Pipers they're no longer with us. Didn't I miss those guys a lot?
Yeah.
But then you get the Mark Colemans and the Butterbeans who were kind of right on that same edge. And now they're doing like so much better. So it's just nice to see what's possible.
Yeah, here's an off the wall question. What do you think of slap fighting?
Oh man. All right.
I'm just curious.
I'm not a social media troller, but I somehow got caught up last night. Interesting you asked that question. Reading the comments to a slap fighting video. And I could tell you if there were 400 comments, 399 of them said, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen." Now, I didn't comment, and I'm not saying that would be my comment, and I definitely wouldn't be the 400th person that had a different opinion. But I mean, damn, man, you tell me. You're the athlete in the bunch. Is there? Well, I mean, you and Don. Is there something I'm missing here?
No. To me, it's a novelty. It's a novelty. It's a spectacle. But when you look at what is the defense, what is the common sense factor of this? I mean, you look at boxing has been around for 100 plus years. And when you see a lot of the athletes that finally retired from boxing, typically not that long after you start to see issues of CTE, Alzheimer's, dementia, things of that nature will start to set in because it's just constantly being struck in the head. With mixed martial arts, the UFC mixed martial arts, NHB being around for 30 years now, it's the newest contributor to CTE. Alzheimer, and dementia. You know, especially when you're back in the bare knuckle era, you really couldn't hit as many times, but the reality is, you know, it's still a big time contributor. I look at that slap fighting could be the fastest contributor to it all because there is no defense to it whatsoever. You get 3 shots at me. I mean, if I'm still standing after the first two, you get three strikes, you're out type of deal.
Dan, I'm right there with you, man. And it's the CTE issue being one side of it. And you stated it completely accurately, I think. I mean, time will tell, but how could that not end up being exactly what it's pointed toward? But the other part of it, I'm breaking it down. You know, in 85, I think it was, that's the first time I saw something that approximated a mixed martial arts fight. And that was before the term mixed martial arts had even been coined.
Right.
It was, you know, traveling around Japan and Brazil and Holland and Russia back in those days. We get involved in these little, I guess you call them smokers back then. And from there, it evolved to Denver in 1993.
Yep.
Now, just like every old burnout hippie says they were at Woodstock, I, honest to God, was at UFC #1. And it was lucky. Zane Breslov, who was a local promoter, got me a ticket. I used to promote in the Denver market, and I was there on that date. And I remember watching it. In its like first like really organized form, and I came away from it, you know, before the world was talking about it, with a whole different impression than even UFC itself was marketing it as back in those days. Because you remember, to get eyeballs, they called it the ultimate blood sport, and you know, Carnage Unleashed and all of that. And years later, when it started to gain popularity, and a lot of people were still railing against it, saying this is barbaric, this is not a sport. I'm like, guys, let me break it down to you. And I don't need to tell you guys are the world's experts in this, far beyond my level, but it's about as the purest form of sport as you can ever find. I look at slap fighting and I'm trying to break it down, and I just don't see it, man. I don't know where it is. I don't know. And then one other note on it, and I don't want to go too far down this road, but you know, I was watching some of those videos last night. And at the end of each fight, it's called a fight, at the end of each slap, the guy that won was like cussing the other guy out. And dude, I don't mean to sound like a Puritan or anything, you know, and I'm not far right and I'm not a liberal left or any of that stuff. So this has nothing to do with any of that. But just the behavior in it, I just don't feel it's good for anybody. It's like when Colby Covington.
These guys aren't fucking real athletes. They're not real athletes. They don't train. You know, there's nothing you could do to prepare yourself for it. You know, you don't spend any time in the gym, on the road, you know, training your ass off, prepping for it. So they don't have any fucking sense of what it takes to be an athlete and what it means to compete against somebody, you know, in true form.
Absolutely. And then when the guys win, you know, maybe it's a marketing thing or a gimmick thing, but they just don't come across as very good human beings, man. And I got to tell you, that shit bothers me. It's like, you know, back in the day, you know, when, you know, name them, Chael Sonnen and Dan Severn and Don Fry won a fight or lost a fight, you guys would get up and have an interview and you'd come across as the guys you are. You're like good, solid, articulate, upstanding human beings. It's like, I don't think slap fight's promoting that. It's the opposite. And again, call me Puritan, but that kind of bothers me.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Well, like I said, they don't train. They don't make any sacrifices like a real athlete does, you know? So what the fuck would they know?
Exactly.
You know, there's no common ground between the two guys slapping each other. Except, you know, boom, boom.
It's you're summing it up a lot better than I could, man. Yeah.
Well, just okay, move to a different angle. I mean, Rick, I mean, I've known you, you know, for quite a few years. I mean, how did you ever get into represent all these different athletes? What did you do earlier in life that prepared you for being like, you know, I mean, you represented like so many different monsters in all kinds of sports. But there was always like the monsters. Yeah. I mean,
it's been primarily combat sports centric for me. I did have a stint back in the mid 80s where I was representing a lot of NBA and NFL players, and you know, I enjoyed that. But I grew up as a pro wrestling fan back when the territories were still a thing. And I always loved it. To me, it was like the ultimate comic book heroes come to life, and you could go see them at your local VFW hall on Saturday night or whatever it was. I always loved it. I came up, I'm not going to bore you or Don to death with this, so I'll do it fast. But from the time I was 16, I was promoting small events. I don't know how, it just was always in my blood. And I did those.
Okay, at 16, name me stuff that you promoted. I'm just curious.
I was elected as the Secretary of Assemblies for my high school. So part of my job as Secretary of Assemblies was putting on the events for the school. So it could be a talent show, could be the gong show, could be a small concert, whatever it was. And then at 19, I dropped out of college after 3 months to become a rock concert promoter, which my dad loved, of course, after his boy went away to college. And I was successful early on, and I was promoting back when New Wave was actually a term. So I had a little company called Bassman Productions, and I put on the Police and the Talking Heads and the B-52s and the Clash and on and on. So
that's
fun
incredible.
stuff. Yeah, I owned a nightclub. I owned 2 nightclubs. My first one at age 20 before I was legally able to drink. And we very illegally drank and did a whole lot of other things, keeping in mind that it was the early 80s and that stuff was super glorified back then. So that's how I got started. And then Dan, one day out of the blue, I still don't know why, I was watching WWF religiously, and it was WWF then, not E.
Yep.
I got really into the whole American hero versus the anti-American hero thing, which was Hulkamania. And then, of course, Dusty Rhodes over at NWA, then WCW, and Wyndham and Rotundo, the American Express, and Sergeant Slaughter and Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And again, I'll do this quick, but I remember watching the villains and, the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. And I was looking at all these guys, but especially the American heroes. And this is now sacrilegious, but I'll say it because my opinion has changed. I'm like, these guys don't strike me as like comic book heroes. They don't like speak the way the heroes should speak. They don't have quite the physiques Hulk sort of did. So, and again, that's sacrilegious now, because now these guys are all legends and I have a certain degree of worship and a lot of respect for all of them. So I set out to find 4 guys of multi-ethnic makeup that I could put in red, white, and blue spandex and launch upon the world of pro wrestling as Power Team USA. And it was a guy from outside the business who had no clue about, I knew nothing about the business. And I went out, I found 4 guys, I outfitted them, we photographed them. I rented a ring and a racquetball court, found this guy, Red Bastien, to come train them. Red, of course, was a legend. I didn't really know.
Yeah.
And then, all these years later, 2 of the guys were Ultimate Warrior and Sting. So that, got me into the business and got me a bit of a reputation in the business, for better or for worse, oftentimes worse. And it allowed me entree a few years later when I opened my own promotion in California. And I never really looked back. Now, as part of that promotion, I also owned the first ever true MMA gym in the state of California. Now, Ken Shamrock would dispute that to a degree because, of course, Ken had the Lions Den, but Ken's gym was a fighters only gym. Mine was for fighters and for the public. And when I built the gym, as a last thought, I decided to put a pro wrestling ring in the gym. And I met this guy, Tom Howard, who's now one of my best friends in the world. Of course. Tom became my trainer. So overnight, I kind of launched into pro wrestling and mixed martial arts at the same time. And 2 years later, I was managing Mark Coleman and Mark Kerr and Oleg Taktarov and Tank Abbott. And on the pro wrestling side of things, I had discovered and was training John Cena and The Miz, and I inherited Sean O'Hare from WCW. And it was just kind of like a perfect storm, man. It all happened at once.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. Especially when you talk about having Ultimate Warrior and Sting. They became such big stars. Sting, I still see Sting every now and then at some type of autograph sign. His line is this humongously long. I just can't believe how long his line is.
He's a true icon, man. And you know what? And he's a good dude, probably more importantly than everything else. Super good guy.
Because I've never really had a chance to speak to him, so I did not know what kind of a person he really was. Okay.
Oh, you should sit down and talk to him. You guys are like both those ultra wholesome Americans, at least as I know you guys. Who knows what happens behind the scenes? Don probably knows about that. But sit down and talk to Sting sometime, man. You guys would get on great. I know it. Super good.
Good.
I
Yeah,
met him
well,
once.
He,
Randy Anderson.
sorry, Don.
I met him once. Randy Anderson up in Vegas. Randy Anderson wanted to introduce me to him. And we went over there and he couldn't get his that fucking ass out of the chair to stand up and shake my hand. So I wasn't too impressed.
Well, boy, Don just poured some cold water on my fire, didn't he? But that dog,
Hey,
you know what? I always say this, you know, like you guys, I've met hundreds, if not thousands of celebrities over the years. And the guys that you have, you know, 10 or more exposures to, where you can talk to them for a minute, I think you probably get a pretty good sense of their character. But I can't tell you how many times I've met somebody for 1 minute that I've heard over and over again is a great guy. And I walk away going, wow, what an asshole. Or vice versa. That guy's such an asshole, but he was really nice when I met him for that 1 minute. So I'm like, how can you really tell in 1 minute?
Yeah.
You never, we all have our good moments and our bad moments, you know?
yeah, no, it is. It is what it is. Is home still California for you now, Rick?
Who's that?
Are you
Myself?
still living? Are you still living in California?
I moved back to California about a year and a half ago. I was living on Maui for 5 years in Hawaii.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah,
right.
it's like
I
who in
did-
their right
I-
mind moves from Maui to California, right? But
Yeah, I would have stayed out Maui there. I mean, what a beautiful. I mean, Hawaii, beautiful.
Maui was awesome, man. I was living in this weird old wooden house in middle of a forest with no neighbors, up a mile, like a 1.75 mile windy dirt road that you couldn't get Uber Eats delivered to or anything else for that matter. And it was pretty crazy, man.
I mean, but it wasn't off the grid. I mean, you still had all the luxuries of electricity and all that because we just waited.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The only thing I didn't have was Wi-Fi, and you couldn't get it there. There was no satellite or cable system that could deliver it. And I ended up in late life with a new job, an actual job, which I never thought I'd have again as long as I lived, that pays me very well, that I love, that is internet dependent. So I essentially moved from Maui to California so I could get a Wi-Fi connection. Well, and be near the entertainment industry also, but sounds better to say the first
Oh
one.
wow, that's
Yeah. But yeah, living in on the small little town on the west end of the San Fernando Valley now. Just me and my 5 beautiful pit
well. I was
bulls.
gonna say I
There's,
saw I see two of them. I see the one that's laying behind your back there. Then
oh yeah.
I see the one that's in
That's
your
my girl
hands.
Eos behind me. Yeah, that's Eos. She's retired. She sleeps most of the time. This is Wilson, who's 100% blind, but amazing.
Yeah.
And just me and my 5 pit bulls here in California. And we've got a big old backyard. It's like our own dog park, and all is good. You know, aside from this like little brain cancer thing, life is great. So there you
Well,
go.
what's I mean, if I'm not prying, I mean, what I mean, are you going to like chemo with that? I mean, or is it
Not in chemo, but I've had 2 lengthy courses now of radiation.
okay?
Chemo was on the table, and after consulting with my doctor and a couple of others, opted for the radiation courses. I was when I was 16 and 19, I had stage 4 lung cancer, and I spent the better part of 3 years in the hospital, more nights in the hospital than I did out. And
Wow.
there were 4 major surgeries, but what really did a number on me was a chemotherapy. And, you know, this is not very rational, but I have like this natural aversion just to the whole concept of chemo because of my last experience.
Sure.
So I've had 2 6-week-long courses of radiation now, 5 days a week. And the second one ended 3 weeks ago. And now I'm a couple of weeks away from my MRI, because they wait a month between finishing the course of radiation and the MRI, because the effects of it accumulate. So they want to give it some time to do what it's hopefully supposed to do. And then I'll find out around May 3rd or May 4th or so what's next, if anything. So that's the latest.
Well, again, I'll just say that as we all start getting older, things start going awry. I mean, for myself, I've had a total hip replacement thus far, and about 3-4 weeks back, I had the double carpal tunnel surgery on the hands because they were just locking up and stuff like that. But now it's like they're almost back to new. I'm almost ready for I
Nice.
guess that's like the 100,000 mile tune-up. I should be good for the next 100,000 miles.
Yeah, and I know this is not a fun thing. I've heard a lot about that. So you're recovering well from that?
Yeah, I mean, it was really kind of weird how sensitive that palm area would be afterwards. But it's kind of like it's kind of like I really can't do a push up off of my palm area yet. But if I put my knuckles out, I'm okay to go with my knuckles out. So
And
it just learning
are
how to
you
do things.
so
Go
are
ahead.
you doing those types of push-ups?
Oh,
The
yeah,
ones
yeah, with
you're
knuckles,
doing
yeah.
them. Okay.
Yeah, no,
See,
it's Rick for a 65-year-old cat. I think I'm one of the more alpha males of the 65-year-old pack.
right. And I was going to say, I mean, when I asked that question, I thought I already knew the answer to it, which would be a yes. But that's just like so representative of how you've always rolled. And dude, that's what it's all about. It's like this is a third major illness of my lifetime now. And in the first two, I did not treat it like Dan Severn would treat it. I was angry. I isolated. I got depressed. I was addicted to pain medications. I ended up homeless, which is part of how I ended up getting to Maui. It's a long, stupid story.
Wow. Okay.
And then, 2 years ago, I don't
Hitchhiked
mind
to
Ty.
Maui.
Sorry, Don.
You hitchhiked to Maui.
One friend of mine years ago said he could talk to his dad and get us a discount train ticket there because his dad was a train engineer.
Yeah.
But fortunately, that train company doesn't run anymore. No, I had Don. I actually moved to. I had 3 of my pit bulls, and we were in a drug rehab in the ghetto of Houston, Texas. And I arrived at that drug rehab on fumes with like $40 to my name. And a few months later, I was leading a fitness group at the rehab, was feeling solid again, and decided out of nowhere I was going to take my dogs and move to Maui. So I figured out how much it would cost. It was 17,000 and change, and I set out to earn it. And 4 months later, I had the money, and we moved to Maui. So I was able to buy economy plane ticket for myself, and the doggies flew underneath. But that's how we got to Maui.
Wow. Rick, I got to give it to you. I mean, you fly by the seat of your pants like nobody else can do. You do well with that.
Yeah, and thank you. It's also been a downfall for sure my whole life because I've had an amazing life and I wouldn't give it up. And a lot of what I think would be probably defined as successes and certainly hundreds of experiences, that like the average guy, maybe the CPA or the lawyer or the doctor probably have had very few of. So that's been really cool. The one thing I haven't done, which the lawyers and the doctors and the CPAs do, is find something that makes sense and stick to it for a long, long period of time so you actually build stability in a real future. And that is what my life is about these days. I wouldn't say I've learned all my lessons yet because we're always learning.
Sure.
But I can tell you this time out with this illness, 2 years ago, I started a podcast, ironically called The Cancer Warriors. And my podcast host, her name is Erica Porter. She was a Jungle Girl from WoW, very good female pro wrestler. And she has stage 4 breast cancer. And this woman is freaking amazing. She is positive. She's on point. I mean, she's realistic about she has stage 4 cancer. But she is doing everything she can do to combat this like in a positive and proactive manner. And we talked about that on the podcast for 2 years. We have guests on and talk about the same thing. And I remember saying over and over again, God forbid, and I hope I didn't prophesize getting ill for a third time, but I'd say over and over, God forbid I'm ever diagnosed with something again. I would have to fucking practice what I preach this time and live that way.
Sure.
And, here we are now in this beautiful home with my beautiful dogs. And, this will not be forever, Dawn. I'm vegan now. I've been vegan for about 6 months. I've done this for health reasons. My spiritual game, my mental game, my emotional game are better than they've ever been before. So you know, like yourself, Dan, you get carpal tunnel, you repair your hands, you find a new way to do push-ups. I'm doing I like to think I'm doing everything somebody possibly could do that has brain cancer, that has a degree of radiation poisoning that I have right now, and still do everything that's possible. So that's kind of what life is about at the moment, more than anything.
Yeah, no, again, the first thing I had done was the hip replacement, and that just really knocked me down. I couldn't believe what that did for me, and even the doctors. When I get Don's, I heard the story before, but I'll tell it to you, Rick. You can pause for a moment there, Don. But he goes out because they did an MRI, and he comes back and he brings another doctor with him. He goes and he actually goes, ask him. And the other guy goes, my associate said that you walked in here. I go, I really didn't walk in here. I go, I kind of limped in here. He goes, based upon your x-ray, you shouldn't be able to limp in here. He said your hip is totally imploded. He goes, if 1 through 10, with 10 being the worst hip we've ever seen, he goes, you're 10 plus. He goes, it's just, impossible to even think. He goes, you're in pain, aren't you? I go, oh yeah. He goes, but you don't act like it. I go, well, I'm sitting down here right now. If I get up and I start to see, I go, you'll see, I'll be hobbling as I head out of here. But just a couple months before that, I'm pushing wheelbarrows full of bricks as I'm limping across my property. I'm thinking, but I still have things to do. And I go, well, I'll get it checked when I get it checked.
Yeah.
In the meantime, just keep moving along.
That's how we roll, right? And Dan, it's nice to be able to defy people's expectations when they see like these guys pointed out to you. It's like I get a lot of that these days, and you want to be humble about it. And that's your first inclination always, because we want to live in humility, I think. But I have to be honest, it's like Sting put up a really nice post. Sting and Boss Rutten both yesterday put up really nice posts about me, about, hey, I've been courageous while they're fighting not breast cancer, sorry, brain cancer. Yeah. Oh, by the way, if I say something really stupid, or if I try to be funny and I'm not funny, I blame that on the brain cancer. So I'm like getting all the mileage I can out of that excuse right now. So
okay, sounds
in
good.
any case, what's that?
I said, sounds good. We'll buy it. We'll buy it.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's nice to to get those kind of accolades from your medical team or from whoever, because end of the day, I mean, we all have egos, and kind of like seeing the post from Boss and the post from Sting, you get a lot of comments and motivational words from people you don't even know, and it just keeps you moving in a positive direction. Just like when your doctor says, "Oh, you shouldn't be able to do that," and that's a compliment. It makes you feel good. It makes you want to keep moving.
Yeah,
for sure. So how's Don doing? Don Fry, how you holding up, man?
I'm perfect, baby. I'm perfect. I'm at the sign of perfection and beauty and all that good stuff, man.
Well, that's immediately obvious looking at you. I can see that visually. But how you feeling, man? Everything good?
I feel like I've been hit by a train. Fast
All
one,
right.
too. So some days it's a slow train, but most days a fast train. But,
yeah. Oh, I hear you on that, brother.
well, I think it's just all part of that. Yeah, we participated in these combat sports, and as one gets older, what injuries that you took somewhere along the journey, they come to say, hey, you remember this back in 02? Do you remember this back in 90 this, or yeah. So it's just back to heart again, just to let you know, you maybe should have took a little bit easier, but like, and I know darn well Don would do it all over again, just like I would do it all over again, because we're having the times of our lives.
right.
Absolutely. So Don, would you do it all the same way again?
Of course.
Good. And I'm glad to hear that, man. We can't change what's in the past, that's
Right.
for sure. What I do wonder, Dan, is how much can we reverse the direction that we sometimes think we're heading in? Like the Butterbeans, for instance. It's like I have this goal now that if I make it out of this, when I make it out of it, I want to end up doing things athletically and physically I never even thought I might be able to do. Now, I'm 62 now. am I absolutely insane for thinking that? Is my brain cancer making me that stupid? Or
No.
is it really possible? And I believe that, you know, I think I follow like 29 people on Instagram. I came up with this guy. He goes under Fit Old Boy. Have you seen him?
No.
Fit Old Boy. This guy is 70 years old. He is 61 and he's got his before pictures up at 61. I'm in way better shape right now at 62 than he was at 61. This guy is 70 now. He is flipping shredded. He's doing like standing backflips. That barely scratches the surface of what this guy's doing. And you look at that, you're like, oh my God, I can do that. Someone else did. It's possible. So
No, man.
we'll
I'm just happy. I'm still out on the mats. I'm still teaching seminars and speaking engagements. I still love teaching amateur wrestling. That's still my first love. But then doing anything with MMA and submission grappling and even showing professional wrestling. But the thing is, if you watch like professional wrestling today, there are so many moves back to back to back that they're not telling enough of the story that it's like shock, 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 shock. It's like you're not giving the audience time to register and to give you any kind of a feedback. And they're doing so much more high risk maneuvers again in multiples. I'm amazed at some of the stuff I've seen recently on the being shared with me. So
I am so with you on that, man. It's like I don't watch it much. I do watch WrestleMania every year. I watch the Royal Rumble because I'm a Battle Royal mark, I have to admit. But I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the guys, like Sting's tag team partner, Darby Allin. Have you seen the kind of stuff he does? He might be the biggest daredevil in all of pro wrestling. And
really,
oh God, it's off the chain. And most of the moves don't make any sense. Not most, almost all the moves don't make any sense. They're impressive when you see them. You're like, oh my God. I mean, you get a oh my God or a holy shit chant. You know what that's all about.
yeah.
It doesn't contribute to the story, as you said, that's for sure. The art of storytelling is a rarity now in pro wrestling. They're really good at entertaining the fans with the spots because that's how wrestling has evolved or what it's become. But man, I think of Darby Allin when he's my age, because he's like my size. Like I won't be around to see it, but I can't even imagine. It's probably not going to be a pretty sight.
What are some of the things you want to try and do once you beat cancer?
Sorry, Don.
What are some of the things you want to try and do after you beat cancer?
All right. This is going to be all right. I'm going to say one thing first. This goes back to this will relate directly to your midget/dwarf question. It's like, where's this going, right? And it's not doing a scene with Bridget the midget. That's not it. So,
shucks.
I honest to God bought a big fuzzy wig and a black singlet, and I'm going to call my friend Billy Blades, who owns Micromania. That's the little person's wrestling company that tours around the U.S. Billy used to be one of my guys in my company, so I'm sure he'll do me a solid. And I want to put on the singlet, and I want to put on the wig, and I want to be Andre the Giant in an all midget battle royal. That's one. And I thought of this before I had cancer. I know I sound completely crazy right now, but I've had this idea for a long time. Don, I would love to do a fight, man. Believe it or not, just to test myself. I know, Dan's like, how stupid are you? Yeah.
Well, see, okay, Rick, I'm thinking, I would do probably a fight right now, but it would be more like a Jello match, Jello wrestling or something like that. It to show that I'm really health conscious. It'll be sugar-free Jello. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, but we did that last night in my living room already, the Jello wrestling thing.
Oh, well, I see. Okay, and we weren't even invited.
Yeah. Right. Good, great friend.
You already had enough voice. He didn't need you.
Don, I don't know, man. I do entertain that fantasy sometimes, and I know it's a fantasy, the idea of doing something like that. But I've had my ass like so kicked in life. Like the two illnesses that I had prior, I was actually pronounced by my doctors as like terminally ill at certain junctures along the way.
Right.
And I've I've been shot, I've been stabbed, bitten by a copperhead snake. That was the most painful thing of my life.
Oh.
You know, I've been homeless for periods of times. I've been drug addicted. I've had my ass kicked good. But the flip side is there's been a lot of amazing things too. And I guess the point of this is like in my own diseased brain here, I would think it'd be a pretty cool accomplishment to at least get through the training that would be required to get in the ring to do a fight. That maybe I could run away before the bell rings for round one. I don't know, but it's just been a thought. That's all.
It's a good thought.
Maybe more realistically, I'd love to run again. I used to be I was never a distance runner. I did complete one marathon, almost killed myself in the process. I would love to be able to run a mile again.
This fight is far for you, you know, shit.
Who knows, right? Who knows what we're capable of.
See, Rick, what I have to put up with almost on a weekly basis here right now. It's like going, I should be getting a medal right now just for
That's fantastic. Well,
yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
I figured when I heard from Tony, your producer, thank you, Tony, about joining.
Tony's great about this. You know, he's really good about all this.
Well, when he reached out about joining you, fine gentlemen, I knew that I was pretty sure I could count on a beating from Don. So it's all good, man. It's all good.
Well, how'd you come up with the idea for Ultimate Pro Wrestling? What were some of the challenges that faced and established it?
So to be honest, okay, so UPW, Ultimate Pro Wrestling, started, I'm not great at years, but I think it was 98. And it was out of this little gym, Extreme University in Mission Viejo, the MMA gym I referenced earlier. And to be really honest, the name Ultimate Pro Wrestling, I just borrowed from the Ultimate Fighting Championships because that was like such a thing and I was so into it. I later was actually sued by UFC over the name. But it was great. We got it back. It all worked. And actually, Dana, when he was a lot more accessible back in those days, my lawyer couldn't reach their lawyers. So my lawyer, Mark Hines, calls me. He goes, "Don't you know this Dana White guy?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Just call him." So I called Dana and Dana got on the phone and I told him it was happening. He's like, "That's ridiculous." And an hour later, his lawyer called and said, "No problem." So I got the name back. But, you know, Don, I named the company because of my, my love for Ultimate Fighting Championships. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a pro wrestling company that was totally filled with like super huge, larger than life, like very easily identifiable characters. Now, I was in Southern California, you know, where the Freak Show lives, Gold's Gym and World Gym and all of that. So just, you know, got to recruiting and went very slowly, put on some shows in the gym for, I think admission was like $3 or something like that. The first match ever was Aaron Baker, if you remember him, legendary bodybuilder, against a guy named Psycho Matt Hall, who went on to run the big Aryan gang in San Quentin before he died. And that was like indicative of the types of characters we had from day one. We just had like a human freak show. And, you know, and then came the Mark Colemans and the Mark Kerrs, who both trained with me at UPW for a while, their first pro wrestling training. Marco Huas was in our ring. Ken Shamrock was there. Ken Norton, the boxer, used to come around and hang out and kind of get in the mix a little bit.
Wow,
and
who's who there? That's
it was,
fantastic.
yeah. And the beauty of this is like, I'll tell a lot of what I call tall tales. I'm pausing so Don can throw a joke in there about tall tales. No. But I have photographic evidence to back all this stuff up. So I can say that at least. I mean, amazing, incredible group photos from back in the day. And, you know, we took off. I made a call one night to the owner of the two major local nightclubs to ask what he would think about having pro wrestling in his nightclubs. And he said yes. And overnight, our production quality changed dramatically. I then got a call out of the blue from Bruce Pritchard one day, who I did not know at that time. Bruce was the second in charge of talent relations at WWE. He goes, "Hey, we heard about what you guys are doing in California. We're casting a new show called SmackDown. It's going to be an all-women's pro wrestling company." Very few people know this story because SmackDown never became an all-women's company.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the original mandate, apparently. And he goes, "Hey, we hear like you're hustling in LA. Can you put together like the best freak show of women from California to come audition for this. And we brought in all the top bodybuilders and fitness athletes and runway models and the whole nine. And JR showed up that day. He came with Bruce. So I knew they were coming. So I had Dan, there's gonna be a name coming up that you know in a second. I had three of my biggest guys physically show up that day. Russ McCullough, who was 6'11" and 350 pounds. WWF was all about size at this time.
Yep.
And Stephen Gamlin, who was 6'7", 310, who later went on to win the Team Tough Man when UPW fought the NFL on Team Tough Man. And a third guy named Sylvester Turkai, who I'm sure you know well.
Yes.
So I have these three guys show up. Sylvester's not a small fellow either, as you know. 6'6", 300, looked great. And I had them, we staged it. They all came walking in together. And, we're auditioning women, right? JR's mouth practically dropped to the ground. And he's like, holy shit, this is what you're training here? I'm like, yep. He goes, hey, you guys don't happen to have your gear with you, do you? Well, why, of course we do. So 3 short matches later, and the following week, I got a phone call from Bruce. We want to offer these 3 guys development deals. And this is back in the day when a development deal was a big deal. They weren't just throwing them out like stuff against all that. And that started a relationship with me and WWF. And I became a development territory for them. UPW did. And it just like really accelerated my entry into the business. And it went super, super fast from there.
Wow. No, it's Rick, you've always impressed me the way that you're able to just meet people and then just the way that your mind thinks, and you can put things together pretty quickly, and you know people who to call, and you call them right then and there on the spot.
Yeah, and I think it's just doing what you say you're going to do and delivering. There's not enough of that in this world, I think.
Well, it's a little bit of a rarity nowadays. It's we live in strange times. I'll just put it that way. We live in strange times.
Oh, do either of you guys have kids?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, how old are your kids?
Don, go first.
I got a 2000 and a 2001 model.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, I've got 5 children, but oldest one is basically 36. And I think the youngest would be right in his mid-20s. It keeps changing every year on me, Just when I figure I had it all down, it changes again. Yeah.
So you guys got those both have young to mid-20s in your life. I'm sure you guys have raised them with a whole lot of different standards and morals than the average parent is doing these days. But you mentioned like times are changing, right? It's like,
yeah,
I'm not going to name names, but we're in the middle of a big deal recently with a company in Berlin. And we flew all the way from here to Berlin, Germany to finish this deal. And one of the women who was running point there didn't make our meeting. She's local. Well, her friend's brother, so it's, a couple steps removed from her friend's brother was missing in Israel after the October 7th attack over there. Yeah. So that's a sad thing. And it's not about getting into that, but it wasn't her that was in Israel. It wasn't her friend that was in Israel. It was her friend's brother. Yet this girl had to take a mental health day. So that's why she didn't show up to our meeting. And I'm like, maybe this will sound really judgmental of me because I'm mixing with a tragic thing in Israel. And I realize how tragic that is. But what is it with like kids and mental health days these days? Anytime there's like something hard happens, what happened to following through on commitments and, standing up to say what we're going to do, right? Yeah. I have freaking brain cancer right now. If I told Tony I'm going to be here at 4 o'clock, it'd be here at 4 o'clock, yeah. Right?
No, well, it still boils down to parents being parents. And I mean, I'll say that I've been an absentee parent most of my life because I've lived a life being on the road quite a bit. I've always tried to say that I'm only a phone call away, but that phone call away doesn't really help when if they fall down, they hurt themselves. You're still not there, and you're not there to see their graduation. You're not there to see their birthday. You're not there to see. There's so many things that I missed just because everyone plans for the weekends. Well, Rick, you know darn well how many weekends did you ever have off? I mean, that's when you're making your biggest paydays right there on your weekends because now everyone else that did the work week, now you're cashing it on the weekends. That's how I looked at things. I ran a training facility here during the work week. And then I would take off on either a Thursday night or a Friday sometime because I never had classes on Fridays because I learned real quick working with young males don't have classes on a Friday night because no one will be there because they're out looking for Mrs. Goodrich and don't ever have it early on a Saturday morning because they probably found Mrs. Goodrich the night before. So again, I learned real quick, don't run Saturday morning classes and don't run Friday night classes.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's smart. It's a way to do it, right?
Well, I learned kind of the hard way because I would be the only person inside my gym. I go, wow, okay.
How are your kids doing, Mr. Fry?
They're doing okay. They're doing okay. They're mad at me right now, so we're estranged. Apparently, I did an interview, which I don't remember doing, and bagged on their mother, and then the guy put up photos of my girls without their permission, and I don't even know. I don't know where he got the photos. I don't even remember doing this interview, So they're a bit pissed at me right now.
All right, and you gonna repair that?
Hey, they're the ones that are mad. When they get done being mad, then they can make the phone call.
Good, good. Well, sounds like you're in a good place with it, man. That's the most important thing.
All right.
Finding our own peace where we can, right? It's like this, I got this MRI like 10 days from now, I think. I'm not even counting the days. When people have these sorts of things and they have tests coming up, it's like now there's all these new terms. One term is scanxiety, mixing your upcoming MRI scan with anxiety and how freaked out you get yourself about what's going to happen. I'm like, oh, what's going to happen is going to happen. I have that much anxiety about it. It's like,
right.
It's up to us how we think about, our kids, our health conditions, and our thoughts, I think, influence so much of the outcome. So good for you, man. It's really cool. You want to talk more about MMA and stuff?
You bet. You
So-
bet. Whatever direction you want to move here, Derek. It's I'm actually. It's been such a long time since I last spoke to you because the world went in seclusion for a while there for three years, and we had the old, what I call it, the old COVID caper taking place there, and the greatest picture I saw was the whole family that was hiding behind the couch as they're watching the television, like going, and like, wow.
Yeah.
Rick, when the world, I should say, when the United States shut down and they said that only first responders are out on the roads, and things of that nature. I mean, I was in Michigan, I had to be in Arizona. And they were saying that they're going to have state police or the National Guard at the borders and stuff like that. I'm thinking, well, I'm the only car driving down the road. I'm thinking, I'm about to find out here real quick because I'm driving from Coldwater, Michigan, out to Phoenix, Arizona. Nobody at the border right there. I kept on going, but literally, I couldn't believe how many miles I went before I started to come up on the first tractor trailer. And then as I start to pass the tractor trailer, I kind of look up. The guy looks down there, shoots his horn. I hit my horn, give him a thumbs up, then I kept on going. It was weird because Americans are quick to forget. They'll forget this like it just happened yesterday. And I go, please don't forget. Don't forget when it comes time to vote. And you better vote the way that a true American wants to vote. Again, because I've been to a lot of other countries, and there's a reason why everyone is coming to the United States. It is truly the land of opportunity.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I'm going to completely agree with you on America being the land of opportunity. I've been to 57 countries. I know that. I don't know if you've seen I put that map up on the wall recently, so I counted while I was putting it up. But yeah, so I'm with you on that. I'll say this much about voting and whatnot. I never ever talk politics with anybody. And there's two reasons. One, my opinion is not that interesting. That's the main reason. Secondly, man, it's too polarizing. And, I've decided I have my opinions. Again, mine not going to influence anybody, and I wouldn't even, maybe it would, but I wouldn't try. The reason I said a minute ago, do you want to talk about MMA? It's like, I don't want to bore you guys to death with all my philosophical bullshit, because I can go on all day about guru stuff. It gets a little trying. On the politics, man, it's like my life now, at 62 is about positive connection. It just
Yes.
is. And, if I hope this doesn't invite the conversation, I'm really trying not to get into it. But if I said Trump or I said Biden, I'm going to get very definitive reactions from you guys. You can say it, you'll get none from me, because I don't go there, because I'd rather just talk with you guys about stuff that's like good for us,
Sure, sure.
And I get the political discourse. It's fascinating. It is. It's just not something I choose to get into. That's all.
Well, what do you think
I
about the fight
don't-
between Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje then?
Oh, sorry, Don, I didn't get that.
If we're not talking politics, what do you think about the fight, the BMF fight between Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje?
I mean, how do you not admire that fight in its entirety? And that freaking finish. Oh my God.
Yes, the finish was fantastic.
Oh my God. I mean, you pro wrestling could not have done that finish better. It's just, you couldn't have planned that better. And you know what, Don, I like that fight for a variety of reasons. One, first and foremost, was the action that took place in those rounds. The second is, in my mind, both those guys, Justin and Max, personify what, in my mind, an athlete should be. They train hard, they look good, and they conduct themselves as good human beings. I love that. And I love they came together, they went all out at each other, and then they were cool with each other afterwards. I love the show of sportsmanship. That was a perfect fight, top to bottom, in every respect, I think. And I thought it was really cool that our old pal, the Hammer, got to step in at the end. That was super cool.
Yeah.
I managed Mark back in the day, and he was a freaking maniac. Oh my God. And talk about a guy that has done a whole 360. But it's really not. Yeah, glad to see all of that. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I would love to see Colby Covington and Sean Strickland have a lock the door cage fight and see if they could actually both kill each other. That would entertain me immensely. I would love that. Yes. Yes. Yeah, neither one of those guys has any business holding a microphone in public, if you ask me. But hey, I guess that's how you entertain.
They need to add a few more words to the vocabulary.
But it's just bad, dude. It's just, yeah, it's pretty nuts. I think back to to managing and rolling with Tank in his prime, and I always loved Tank. Nothing but respect and love for Tank Abbott always. The guy was straight up as they come. And I think back to the days where people will look at Tank as being like the cretin of the mixed martial arts world, and that's nothing compared to what we're seeing now. Holy shit! It's just it's a whole different world, huh?
He's tame, yeah.
I get. What kind of bothers me is when there is no real sportsmanship. You see a knockout take place. I mean, he punches the guy, and his back of their head hits that canvas even harder than they got knocked out. As they lay there limp and helpless, then the guy just jumps on top, and they get another 4, 5, 6 punches until that referee jumps in there, stops him. I'm thinking, he's out. Well, I mean, why don't you just move on in, be ready, don't take your eyes off him, but you don't have to pop him another half a dozen times.
Right.
So let me ask you guys this. I don't have this experience. When that happens, when you knock somebody out and they go down, do you know that they're out consciously right away? Are you throwing those extra punches because you legitimately think you have to finish the fight? What's like the thought process behind that?
To me, it always depended on who I fought, the level of my opponent, and then how the punch felt, if it was a good solid punch, and you can feel it, through your skeletal system, then there's no need to finish. No need to back him on with more.
See, and Rick, the sad part is I can't honestly say that because my punches were
Yeah, you were in control.
I was never going to win a match based on punches whatsoever.
Different type of finish, right? But I appreciate that answer from Don, because there's a lot of gray area in that answer, right? I mean, sometimes when I'm watching stuff like that, Dan, I can see that clearly the guy that got the knockout, he knows the fight's over, but if you're Gilbert Ivel or whoever you are, you're going to jump in and be a knucklehead. I got that Henderson, who I love. Dan's always been a friend. I got that he was laying a little extra punishment into Bisping. I got it. So I always wonder. And then you see others where the referee's not doing his job, and I think the fighter thinks they need to finish it so they get the W, because we all know someone can come back from a flash knockout. Right. I don't know.
But on that point, though, how many referees actually have ever been a competitor, though?
I don't know. Good question.
I happen to be. There was a big referee. It was like judges and referee type of schooling that was taking place. It was something that Big John was actually heading up at the time, and this was back in Arizona. And there were like just over 400 people that came into this over the course of the next couple of days, because they spent one day on one and one day on the next. And the state athletic commissioner, who knows me, he just happened to reach out to me. He goes, Dan, he goes, will you be in town? I go, yeah. And he says, would you mind coming and speaking to the group? I go, about what? He goes, well, you're the guy that you've been there through the NHB to the MMA. He goes, just come in and just speak around a couple of things. I said, okay, sure, I'll come on in. And I'm thinking, I don't have a clue what I want to talk to them about, but I'm hoping that they'll just ask a couple of questions and I'll fly from there. But as I come in a little bit earlier there, it's a real heated discussion, because they're talking about what constitutes a down fighter. Is it 3 points down? Is it 4 points down? Is it 3 points down buried weight? Is it 4 points down buried weight? They really get into a really heated subject. And then they're like going, the athletic commissioner gets up there and goes, let's think about the 10-minute blow. People go get us something to drink, go to the restroom, something like that, come on back. And then we'll have Dan Severn speak to us, something like, great. Now I got a hostile crowd I have to speak to. So what I did know, that when they brought me back in, they did a nice little introduction, but then they showed this little montage of different little highlights I did in various matches, suplexes here, dropping knees onto Oleg and things of that nature, headbutts. And I go, how many of these, like when they finally went off, I go, and how many of those the techniques would be illegal today? Now they start laughing, because I mean, literally everything I did in those matches at the time would have been illegal in the mixed martial arts era that we're in, from the no holds barred era. And I go, I couldn't help but hear how passionate everyone was in there as I came in here just a little bit before you guys took your break. I go, you got the best known referee up here. You got Big John McCarthy. He knows how I use my brain. I said, let me show you just how you can use, how I would use that rule against the referee and against my opponent. As soon as Big John goes, are you ready? Are you ready? Then let's get it on, because he's watched too many Marvin Gaye songs here like this. I would drop down to an all-four type of position, and I would do the fastest bear crawl you ever saw across that cage, at all times bearing either 3 or 4 points, had to bear weight, because how in the world can I be doing a bear crawl across there? Just to crash into his legs and then take him down. And they're all looking dumbfounded and stuff like that. And Big John comes up there and goes, that's why he's there to be severed, because he's the guy that reads these rules and then knows how to use them against, because they were made, who made these rules up? Non-competitors.
Yeah.
They really do need to bring in some more competitors, as even the referees, as even the judges, because they'll understand a little bit more of the mindset of what's going through these athletes.
No, agreed, and you're right. Yeah, it was Art Davey and David McLean, and Bob Neidowitz. Those guys didn't know. Sergio Bontarelli over in Brazil, maniac. And yeah, I mean, how many refs did fight? Herb Dean fought. I know that. I actually booked Herb's last fight over in England. That was fun. But I don't know that anybody else
Yeah,
did.
very few. Like I said, at this conference of 400 people, they did at one point. They had everyone stand up and simply just to say their name, what city and state that they're from, and were you a competitor or were you just a fan of mixed martial arts? Out of the 400 people, I think there were only maybe 5 or 6 former competitors. Everybody else was just a fan and watched it. That was it.
You know,
And to me, that makes a world of difference. I'd rather have that competitor because they at least they trained it, they competed in it. They understood it's like what it means to have someone throttle you around there a little bit, whether they choked you, punched you, kicked you, kneed you, elbowed you, something,
You're absolutely right. And I guess it's a lot more uniform now than it was. When I started my fight company, Valor Fighting, was my mixed martial arts company. I was Valor way before Ken Shamrock had Valor Bare Knuckle. I got my license the very first day the California State Athletic Commission gave licenses out. So I actually have the distinction of promoting the first licensed MMA card ever in California, even before UFC did theirs. And I remember doing a show in San Diego, and the commission was there, and a lot of the rules were optional, and they just kind of let us choose right on the spot, what we wanted to do. Now, I had some, in ring and in cage, work myself, but nowhere near the level of professionals like you guys are. So I wasn't qualified. And like one example I remember is I'm like, nah, let's take out elbows on the ground. And boom, they're gone just like that. I mean, who was I to make that call, right? Probably no more qualified than Bob Meyerowitz or even John McCartney at that time was. So yeah, man, it was the Wild West, man. It was different times.
Yeah. Well, I know when I was running shows, I actually had like an amateur level and a pro level. Usually the card would be like a 50-50 mix of so many amateurs, and then you move into the pro. The pros, they simply just what the rules were. I mean, you're making compensation, so you're going to play by the big boy rules. On the amateurs, it all depends on how far along you were in your career. In your first 5 matches, all I allowed to hit, I always refer to the head as the pumpkin. I go say the only thing that's allowed to hit the pumpkin is the hand, whether it be open, close, spinning back fist, hammer strikes. The only thing that ever hits the pumpkin, no knees to the pumpkin, no elbows to the pumpkin, no head kicks to the pumpkin. I go, that was for the first 5 matches. Then matches 6 through 10, I thought, okay, standing head kicks. Because how many people are going to be able to get that leg up there to throw a standing head kick? I thought, okay, I'm trying to buy them. I'm trying to buy them time. Then I gave them the elbow. The last thing I would ever give them is a knee, because that knee, that leg is so powerful tool, and all that bone with the knee and stuff like that. That was the last tool I'd ever get. And actually, a lot of guys are like going, these are some of the best rules we ever saw. You have like a little progression here to where guys get a little bit more experience, but he's not getting destroyed in the process. So
I hear you. Yeah, it's situational, but I completely agree with what you're saying. You want to hear a funny head kick story? I got a funny story for you.
sure, I like anything funny.
Well, I'm not very funny, like I said before, but I blame it on the brain cancer, so it's okay. So we were in Vegas for Pride, and it was their first. There were 2 Pride shows in Vegas. It was the first one, not the one where Coleman fought Fedor, but the one before that. That's where Ruoff fought Randleman. Pretty cool card, stack card. And I had Butterbean on that show, fighting Mark Hunt, which was not a match I loved for Butterbean, by the way, but that's all right, to each his own. And they were having problems with Hunt's visa. So Yumiko, if you remember her, Saki Kabara's matchmaker, reached out to me and said, hey, we need an alternate fighter in case Hunt can't make it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Just, let us know who it is. She's like, oh, no, we want you to bring the alternate fighter. And, back in those days, I know you're giving me this look. There were so many fights. Dan, like when you and I went to England, right? And you fought Dave Legeno. I mean, you were both my buddies, right? I essentially did both your deals. I was involved in so many fights like that back in those days where I kind of had both sides. You wouldn't see that now, but again, different sport back then.
Yeah.
So anyway, I go, do you remember Sean O'Hare?
Yeah.
All right. So I go, because I was transitioning Sean from pro wrestling into mixed martial arts at that time and into kickboxing. And I said, how about Sean O'Hare? And that's exactly the type of fighter that Pride liked, the looks and the physique and the persona and all that. So sure. So got Sean $3,000 to be flown to Vegas and sit in a hotel room in case he was needed to fight. He's like, great, that sounds like a good gig. I'll take it. So we get there, and sure enough, Hunt doesn't get his visa. So Yumiko calls me, says, oh, we've got the spot open. We want Sean to fight. And we came up with a $30,000 purse, which back then was pretty good.
Oh, yes.
And so I call Sean, and Sean's like, great, man. He's ready to celebrate, right? And then Yumiko calls me, says, Mr. Saki Kabara-san wants to talk with you. Can you meet him at his hotel suite? Okay, so I go over there, and Saki Kabara says to me through his translator, he's like, well, everybody was excited about Butterbean Mark Hunt because it was going to be a very good stand-up fight. And I'm like, oh boy, is he asking me to like instruct my fighter to not go to the ground, right? Because you don't really want to,
Sure.
if you're Sean O'Hare, you probably don't want to throw with Butterbean. So I'm like, is that what you're asking? And Yumiko, or the translator, says, yes. I go, well, maybe for an extra $10,000. They're like, okay, no problem. So I call Sean. I go, you now have $40,000, but here's the deal. And I tell him, he's like, no problem. And then 10 minutes later, he's like, fuck, I'm going to get killed, aren't I? And
you might make 40,000, but you might not be able to live to see it, spend it.
Exactly. So Sean and I go out to celebrate that. We drink like 3 bottles of wine between us the night before the fight. Smart.
Before the fight?
The night before the fight, yes.
Oh, God.
Different times, man. But we had money for good wine, so that made the difference, of course. But Sean goes, can you talk to Butterbean, please? And ask him, like, just not to kill me. That's pretty much how Sean put it. So I'm like, I'll talk to Bean. And I talked to Bean, and he goes, Rick, he goes, I won't hurt your boy. I like Sean. He goes, just tell him not to kick me in the face, because if I get kicked in the face, I get really mad. He goes, like, I just become a different person. I'm like, yeah, I'll talk to him. So I tell Sean that. Sean's like, no problem. I'm not going to kick him in the face. All right. So bell rings. They come out. What happens? Boom. Sean kicks Bean right in the face.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No, it was not intentional. It was not intentional. But Bean was like that moment in the Three Stooges when Curly is like, when he gets crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Dude, Bean pummeled him. Sean dropped to his knees, and he's on his knees, and Bean's got his hand behind his boom, boom, boom. And they finished the fight. But anyway, that's the head kick gone wrong story there.
Was that, that match had been done in like 20, 30 seconds? Was that quick?
Yeah, roughly.
Wow.
I'd have to go back and look at it, but that sounds about right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, Rick, honestly, we've been on there almost 2 hours right now. It's almost like I was shocked to believe how quickly time flies. Do you have any social medias you want to put out there if anyone wants to follow up with you?
Sure. I mean, best thing probably is I'm just launched Instagram, and it's Rick_Bassman. My YouTube and TikTok are both Rick Bassman, no spaces, RickBassman. And then on there are the links to all my podcasts. I'm not doing them right now because of this thing. Sure. I'll get back to them shortly. And that's that's about it for social.
Yeah,
thanks
Tony was really good. He'll put something up at the end of the interview, so he'll have all that up there. So I know, because if we just say it like that, it's kind of hard, just for a lot of people to write that down real quick. But Tony will put something up for us.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, and that's all my stuff's linked to Rick Bassman, so you'll find it from there. Man, thanks so much for asking me to.
When Tony said that they had you lined up, I kept thinking, man, I set my alarm and stuff like that, but I was still out in my orchard just tripping away. It's like, because I still got my Farmer Brown shirt on, stuff like that, because I was out there just tripping away, doing what Dad Semper does, just lopping shears and tripping out stuff that I should have done almost a couple weeks early, because stuff is already starting to flower right now, and that's not the best time to be trimming it, but it's got to be done.
Oh, that's great, man. I'm glad you're enjoying life out that way. That's a really cool
Yep.
thing. It's always nice, Dan, to see the guys that have been in it for a while, not only doing well all this time later, but thriving, because we don't see it often enough. So truly,
Is your email and cell phone number all still the same? Because I still have what I had before, but if not, I mean, we can do this off the air.
yep. Email and phone number are still exactly the same.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, good. Because I'll definitely will follow back up with you, because I just, you know, like I said, like when I do head jobs, I'm gonna chat with you, but it's like what I'll follow back up with you and see what other kind of trouble we can get ourselves into.
Let's do it, man. That would be great. I would love that. And,
Thanks for the stories.
Don,
Rick.
really good to see you, man.
Nice seeing you. Thanks for the stories. It was a good day.
Take care, Rick.
Kiss them pounds
Bye.
for me, man. Kiss them doggies. Kiss them doggies.
You know.
Thank you for watching another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity. You better like, subscribe, and share, or I'm going to come to your house.